You call your cat's name across the room. Its ear twitches. Its eyes flick toward you for exactly half a second, and then it goes right back to staring at nothing, completely unmoved. Most people read that moment as proof cats don't understand language, that a name means nothing to them the way it means something to a dog. Science says the opposite. Your cat almost certainly knew exactly what you said. It heard its name, processed it, recognized it as distinct from every other sound in the room, and then made a completely deliberate choice to do nothing about it. Let's start with the study that actually settled this question, because for a long time, it really was just guesswork. In 2019, researchers Saho Takagi and a team at the University of Tokyo published a study in the journal Scientific Reports, specifically designed to test whether cats can distinguish their own name from other words. The setup was carefully controlled. Researchers played recordings of 4 unrelated nouns of similar length and rhythm to a cat's actual name, then finally played the cat's real name and measured the cat's behavioral response. Things like ear movement, head turning, and pupil changes. Across the cats tested, response intensity to the actual name was measurably higher than the response to the unrelated words. Not because the name sounded different acoustically in some obvious way, but because the cats had genuinely learned to associate that specific sound with something meaningful. Here's where it gets even more interesting, because the researchers didn't stop there. In households with multiple cats, they tested whether each individual cat could distinguish its own name specifically from the names of the other cats living in the same home. And the cats could do it. A cat living alongside 2 or 3 other named cats still showed a stronger response to its own specific name compared to its housemates' names, even though all of those names were equally familiar sounds heard constantly in the same environment, spoken in the same voices, in the same rooms. That's not simple pattern recognition to a single repeated word. That's genuine discrimination between multiple learned labels, correctly sorting which one applies to itself. So if the recognition is real, and it clearly is, why does the actual response look so unimpressive most of the time? This is where you have to stop comparing cats to dogs, because the comparison itself is misleading. Dogs were domesticated through thousands of years of deliberate human selection, specifically favoring responsiveness, cooperation, and visible engagement with human commands. Animals bred generation after generation to make coming when called an enormous part of their genetic inheritance. Cats were never put through anything close to that process. Their relationship with humans emerged largely through cats choosing to tolerate human settlements for access to rodents, not through humans selectively breeding for obedience. A cat recognizing its name and a cat feeling obligated to respond to its name are 2 completely separate things, shaped by 2 completely different evolutionary histories. And only one of those things actually happened to cats. There's also a simpler, almost mundane explanation buried inside the same research, and it might be the most relatable part of the whole story. The Tokyo study found that cats habituate to repeated calling. The more times a name gets said in a short window, especially without any meaningful consequence attached to it, the weaker the behavioral response becomes over successive repetitions. This isn't the cat forgetting its name somewhere between the 3rd and 4th call. It's the exact same habituation process that makes a ticking clock disappear from your conscious attention after enough repetition, or a repeated notification sound stop registering after the 10th ping. If your cat's name gets called constantly throughout the day, often for no particular reason, with no food, no play, no consequence attached, your cat's brain is doing something remarkably sensible, learning that this specific sound, despite technically referring to it, usually isn't worth interrupting a nap for. Now here's a detail that should genuinely reframe how you think about every unanswered call. It's not simply about hearing. Cats have exceptional auditory processing, detecting frequencies up to roughly 64 kilohertz, a range that dramatically exceeds human hearing and even outperforms most dogs. There is no meaningful hearing deficit happening here. When your cat doesn't respond, it isn't because the sound failed to register. It's because the sound registered perfectly clearly. got correctly identified as its name, and then got weighed against everything else competing for attention in that exact moment, and lost. This is where the concept of a non-obligate social response becomes genuinely useful. In highly social, hierarchy-driven species, ignoring a direct call from a dominant or bonded individual can carry real social cost, and animals in those species tend to evolve strong instinctive pressure to respond. Cats didn't evolve inside that kind of rigid social hierarchy. Their solitary hunting ancestor didn't answer to anyone, and even in modern multi-cat colonies, feline social structure remains far looser and more voluntary than pack-based species. Responding to a call was never wired into cats as an automatic social obligation the way it was in dogs. A cat weighing whether to respond to its name isn't defying you. It's running a calculation that simply never included submission or social debt as a factor in the first place. And here's the part that actually rewards the relationship you've built, because it isn't all indifference. Researchers and cat owners alike consistently observe that cats respond far more reliably to the voice of their primary caregiver, the specific person who most consistently feeds them, plays with them, and interacts with them, compared to an unfamiliar voice saying the exact same name. That single detail flips the whole story on its head. If a cat truly treated its name as meaningless noise, the identity of the speaker shouldn't matter at all. But it clearly does. A cat that barely reacts to a stranger calling its name across a room will often turn its head almost immediately when that same name comes from the one person it trusts most. The name was never the empty part of the equation. The relationship attached to it was doing most of the actual work all along. So the next time you call your cat's name and get nothing but a single flick of an ear in return, understand what actually just happened behind that unbothered expression. Your cat heard you. It knew precisely which sound belonged to it, sorted correctly out of every other name and word in its environment. It simply made a calculated, independent decision that whatever you wanted wasn't worth abandoning its current position for. A decision built on hundreds of thousands of years of never needing anyone's permission to do exactly that. If this changed how you think about your cat's selective hearing, hit subscribe, because this channel keeps uncovering the ancient instincts hiding behind the everyday things your cat does. And if you know someone convinced their cat has no idea what its own name means, send them this video. They're about to find out just how wrong that is.